Hello and welcome back to my channel Zero to Siva. In this lecture, we will understand about Wsdl. What is a Wsdl? How does it look like? And how to create your own Wsdl. It's a very important topic and actually a complicated thing. I will try to put it as simple as possible. What is a Wsdl? It is a web service definition language. So, if a service provider is exposing some services, how does a service provider describe about this service to the consumer? There should be a way of describing. It is by giving a Wsdl to the consumer. Basically, Wsdl, WSDL, is an XML. How does it look like? How does it describe? Let us see. So first of all, I want to actually start one web service which I have created already, one SOAP web service. I have created it using Java and a framework called as Spring. This web service can be implemented in any language, but I have implemented a SOAP web service in Java. I am going to start that service. Don't worry about how it is implemented. Let us now concentrate on Wsdl part. Okay. So I have this jar file created, soap web service, soap product service.jar. If I just execute this soap.bat, it will start. So I have written it. Don't worry about how this has been implemented right now. That is not our topic. Okay, it is started. So it started Tomcat server on 6060 port. If I want to visit the see the Wsdl, this is the Wsdl URL. Localhost 6060 slash ws slash products.wsdl. This is the Wsdl given by the service provider. That means I have exposed this Wsdl. So let us try to understand what is this Wsdl. How does it look like? See, the root tag is wsdl colon Wsdl. It contains lot of portions. One is Wsdl types. Basically, I said Wsdl will be an XML, right? Using Wsdl, what you do? Suppose if you are a consumer, if you want to consume an operation called as add customer, what the consumer has to do? Consumer has to send an XML which tells which method or which operational service to invoke, what arguments to pass, etc. So basically, consumer will be sending an XML, right? Whenever there is an XML, there should be some schema definition for the tags, right? Yes. So in Wsdl, you define the schema of your XMLs. I am a service provider. I defined a schema, right? So under Wsdl types, you can see there will be schema definitions. You can see under Wsdl types, there is schema definitions. Let us not go into this. First of all, let me tell you how does a Wsdl look like? What all are the parts of a Wsdl? Any Wsdl definition contains these subtypes. So here there is a section called as Wsdl types where we define the schema of the XML tags which we are going to use. And then another part, this is first part. Another part of Wsdl is we define something called as Wsdl message. Third part is we define something called as Wsdl port, and then Wsdl binding, and then Wsdl service. So these are the 5 parts of a Wsdl file. Let us see one by one. As I said, understanding this Wsdl is really complex. I will try to make it as simple for you. First, let us start with our understanding about what is a port type. It is very important. Now, assume that on our service, we are exposing something like customer service.java, right? We are exposing methods inside it. Normally, if you are having a service. Normally what we do is we write a interface. If you are using any programming language like Java or .NET, first what we do is we define a interface. Suppose if I want to expose a service like customer service.java. So I will write customer service interface now. First, in interface, what we do, we write the method signatures. Public. The method type is add customer, which will take customer as argument and return a customer. And let us assume that I want to expose one more method, get customer by ID, which will take ID and return a customer. Assume that you want to expose these two methods. Normally what we do is we write an interface. Interface contains the signature of the methods, but interface does not contain any implementation, just the signature. What is the method name, what is the argument type, what is the return type, etc. are defined inside an interface, right? Similarly, whenever we are exposing a service, we have to describe what all are the operations this service is exposing. So in Wsdl terminology, this interface is called as port type. So port type in Wsdl is equivalent to a interface normally in any programming language, right? So let us see here the port type. How does it look like for my service? I am actually exposing a service called as product service. And in this Wsdl, first we are seeing this part, Wsdl colon port type. In this port type, you can see there are three things. Wsdl colon operation. Let me minimize each of them. How many operations are there in my port type? Get all products is one operation. Add product, get product by name. So it looks like this port type is like an interface, and we are defining, okay, three methods: get all products, add product, and get products by name. So in this port type, that means in this interface, we are exposing three operations. Normally for any method or operation, we give some input data and we expect output data. That means a consumer will send a message. The consumer will send a input XML message and expects an output XML message. Basically, client and service provider, or the consumer and service provider, exchange messages. Consumer will send a message in form of XML. Service provider will send response message. So whenever we are invoking an operation, we need to exchange messages, right? So whatever client sends will be the input message to my service, and whatever service sends is an output message, right? So whenever we are defining an operation, we have to define what is the input message and what is the output message expected for this operation, right? So if somebody is invoking this get all products, they have to send this input message and they can expect this input message. So like that, you can see for add product, get product by name, I have defined input and output messages. So this is my port type definition, which is equivalent to interface. Okay, what is a message? Here you can see on the top, there are lot of Wsdl colon message tags. Let us see one Wsdl colon message tag. For example, here get products by name request message. See, we are following a convention. A message ending with request will be the request object which the consumer will be sending. Okay. Response will be the response message or output message which the service provider will be sending. So here in this message, Wsdl colon message, the name is get product by name request. Whenever a consumer is making a request to get products by name operation, this is the input message, request message. Here in this message, we are defining that it contains a part with name get products by name request, and the how does it look like? It is defined inside a schema SCH. Here under Wsdl types, we have defined a schema. So here, is there something called as get products by name request element? It's a complex type which contains a name of type string. And get product by name response. This is another uh, element in schema. What does it look like? The root tag name is get products by name response. It contains a sequence of products which contains multiple product tags. You can see min occurs is 1, max occurs is unbounded. So basically, inside message tags, they're actually pointing to a schema which describes what is the structure of the input message, what is the structure of the output message. So this is a input message, the one ending with request. It contains the tags defined in this schema. This is the output message, which contains the tags defined in this schema. All right. So an operation, whenever we are defining, an operation will point to an input message and an output message. So we have understood in Wsdl, we understood about types. They contain schema definition, port type equivalent to interface and message. Okay. Now let us talk about the important and confusing thing called as binding. This is a bit of confusing thing. I'll try to explain. Assume that this is one server and this is another server. I'm going to run my applications in server 1, server 2. Here in this server 1 machine, I'm going to expose my service, my SOAP web service using HTTP as transport protocol. So if there is a consumer who wants to consume my SOAP web service, the consumer will make a HTTP connection, and over HTTP post, the consumer has to send the SOAP envelope XML. Here on this machine, I am exposing a SOAP web service over SOAP over HTTP protocol. Okay. The same service, maybe I have some clients who want to use SMTP as a transport. So I want to expose a same service, and here I am exposing over SMTP. So that means there will be an SMTP server. Whenever any consumer application wants to send a SOAP request, they will create a mail message using this SMTP format, and in the mail body they will send the SOAP envelope, okay, to SMTP server, and my implementation here, it will be consuming the messages, SMTP messages from here. In the SMTP, the mail body, there will be SOAP envelope. According to the SOAP envelope, it will execute the operation and give the response. So same SOAP web service, maybe I want to expose it over two protocols, HTTP protocol and SMTP protocol differently. So basically in my Wsdl, I need to describe, hey, by using a combination of SOAP plus SOAP plus HTTP combination I'm exposing over this server 1. SOAP plus SMTP combination I'm exposing on this server 2. Actually, in Wsdl terminology, the servers where we are deploying our applications are called as ports. Okay. Hey, don't get confused with port types. Port types, as I told, it is like an interface. Right? We understood port types in Wsdl definition. It is a interface. But what is port in Wsdl terminology? A server on which we are deploying or exposing our application is a port. So this is port 1 I will say. This is port 2. So I am exposing my same service on 2 ports. On port 1, I am using a combination of SOAP and HTTP. And on port 2, I am exposing my service using SMTP and SOAP. So combination of SOAP and transport protocol, we call it as binding. So in Wsdl terminology, I will say that on port 2, on this port 2, I am exposing SMTP binding. On port 1, I am exposing HTTP binding. So basically, I can say binding is a combination. Binding represents a combination of SOAP with a transport protocol. So in my Wsdl, I might be exposing my service on 2 ports. Each port will be using a binding, right? This is a bit complex. I recommend you to rewind and come back again if you don't understand. Okay. So let me show you how this binding is configured in Wsdl. Here you can see after port type, there is a binding. This binding tag contains some information like transport. So basically don't go through all this. It might be confusing for you right now. Right now, just understand that this binding is defining something called as a combination of SOAP and transport protocol, HTTP. So this binding says the binding name is product service port SOAP 11. It is using SOAP 11 binding. Okay. SOAP 11 protocol binding. So this is one binding and it is using HTTPS transport protocol. Okay. Now coming to service, here I am describing one service. I said same service can be exposed over 2 ports, port 1, port 2, right? So here you can see under one service tag, there can be multiple port tags. This is only one port tag right now. So in this port, it is saying, it is using this binding. What is this binding pointing to? Here is a binding, right? This is HTTP binding. So we are saying here on this port, we are using HTTP binding and the endpoint URL is this one. So actually, if your service is exposed on different ports, there can be multiple port tags in this service. Okay. One service can be exposed on multiple ports. So one service tag can contain multiple port tags. But in this case, you can see only one port because in my implementation, I am exposing on one server. Okay. And how many binding tags can be present inside the Wsdl while describing? Yes. As I told, in one Wsdl, I can describe my service using 2 bindings or multiple bindings. One is SOAP over HTTP binding, SOAP over SMTP binding. So in case if my service is defining SOAP over SMTP as well, there might be one more binding. Okay. So actually in one service, in one Wsdl, I can actually describe about multiple services as well. One can be a product service. I can describe one more customer service, etc. So basically in one Wsdl, I can define multiple service tags. Right now I have only one service description here, but it is possible that in one Wsdl there can be multiple service tags. One service tag defining product service, another service tag defining another service like order service, etc. Right? So I hope you understood how this Wsdl looks like. Now, suppose if somebody is giving this Wsdl to you, how do you consume? I will be able to now make you visualize how to consume a SOAP web service using a tool called as SOAP UI. So I'll just Google for SOAP UI download. It can take me to the download page where I can download the SOAP UI. Here I have already downloaded SOAP UI and installed it on my machine using defaults. I'm just opening the SOAP UI. I'll show you how I am going to consume a SOAP web service if I am given a Wsdl. Okay. Now this is a SOAP UI I opened. Now I want to create a SOAP project using the Wsdl. I'll click on this icon. Here I have to give the Wsdl URL. Okay. What is my Wsdl URL? This is my Wsdl URL. So I'll give this and create a SOAP project. Okay. Once a SOAP project is created by SOAP UI, you can see here there is one tree here. You can see that it is identifying that there are three operations: get all products, get products by name, etc. Now I want to invoke a operation called as get all products. What is the sample request? Actually, SOAP UI will create sample request. If I double click on this, hey, it is clearly telling what is the structure of SOAP envelope to consume this get all products. SOAP envelope is a root tag. It contains header. Right now, for consuming my get all products, there are no headers. In case my service implementation is secured, maybe I need to pass something like username token, the authentication details, etc. in headers. Right now, my SOAP service is not secured, so this header is empty right now. And if you see the body, it contains an XML which says get all product request. And this get all product request belongs to this namespace. Here it is defined. From where is this namespace coming from? As you see, for Wsdl, under Wsdl types, I have defined my schema. This is the namespace, target namespace of all the types defined inside it. So automatically it took. And for getting all products, I don't need to send any input data, just the root tag, only one tag inside the body. This will tell I want to invoke this operation, get all products. Actually, I'm sending this message, get all products request message. See here, is there a message of type get all products request? Yes. Actually, for invoking get all products operation, what is the input message to be sent? Get all product requests. The schema is defined inside the XML. So right now I'm trying to access get all products. So this is the one. Now in the URL, it is saying this is the endpoint URL to which the request has to be sent according to my Wsdl. See, is this the endpoint? Yes, the SOAP UI automatically read the Wsdl, understood the endpoint URL to which we need to make a request, and this is SOAP envelope. Now, if I click on this run button, this SOAP UI will make a post request to this URL, and in the post body, it has sent this XML. Now I have got this response. Hey, what is this response saying? There is some error. Okay, that's fine. Cannot invoke something. All right. So maybe in my SOAP service in the implementation, actually there is one error. Okay. So actually this error is because of some JDK error on my machine. That's okay, don't worry. I will get the response like this. Now, how to invoke get products by name? Oh, this is saying the body should contain a message get product by name request. Here I need to pass some input. I have Apple products. So if I give a request, uh, this will invoke an operation called as get products by name and pass the name as Apple. If I give a request, the SOAP UI will again make a HTTP post request, and in the post body it will send the envelope. So I'll get the response, and of course, don't worry, I got in the body I have got something called the fault because there is an exception on the server. Similarly, if I want to add a product, this is a sample request. Add product request is a root tag. It contains all the product details. If I run, it will make a request and I'll get a response. So based on the Wsdl, you understood how SOAP UI is consuming, right? So in this lecture, you understood the structure of a Wsdl. How does a Wsdl look like and how to consume um, a SOAP web service using SOAP UI. Now, before I conclude, I wanted to actually take some public SOAP APIs, SOAP API Wsdls, and I want to consume any existing SOAP UI. Okay. So I searched for public SOAP UIs available so that I can use it. There are something like public SOAP UIs here. I'll click on it. Fine. There are a lot of public SOAP UIs. I can actually consume anything here. Mm, okay. Um, Let me find a simple SOAP. Yeah. Uh, I'll go ahead. Yes. There is one SOAP web service. I'll take this. I'll just give question mark Wsdl. Yeah. So this is one public SOAP web service exposed, and this is the Wsdl URL. Okay, let me give this Wsdl on SOAP UI and try to see what all operations are there. I'll create a new SOAP project using this Wsdl URL. Actually, the service is, let me close all. The service is a number conversion service. You can see there are two bindings which this service is exposing. One is soap binding and soap binding 1 2. As I said, in one Wsdl there can be multiple bindings. You can see in this Wsdl there are two bindings. One binding and binding 2. Right. Here you can see it is using something called a soap 1.2 actually. This is following SOAP 1.2 version. This is following SOAP 1.1 version actually. So using same transport protocol only, but different SOAP versions. Right. So there are two binding tags here. And if you can see on port 1, they're exposing binding, first binding. And on port 2, it is exposing second binding as well. There are two ports. All right. So one service can have two ports. Right now, in their implementation, at the same URL, you can see same URL. The ports are actually running on same URL. That means on the same machine, at the same URL, they are exposing for both SOAP 1.2 binding as well as SOAP binding. That's okay. So now you can see that this service is exposing over two bindings. I'll go ahead and see here there are two operations. Number two words I want to invoke. Sample request if I see. This is the operation number two words. If I pass a number, let's assume that. 3, 4, 5. I'll pass. What this service is going to do is it is going to convert this number to words. I gave a request. See the response 345. So this is a web service available publicly. I made a request to this operation number to words. If I send any number, it is giving me the number in words. So like that. Now, if I just have a Wsdl, I will be able to invoke that operation using SOAP UI, right? So I hope this gave a clear understanding about what is a Wsdl, how to understand the Wsdl, how to consume. As I said, Wsdl is a complex topic. I try to put it as simple as possible. Mostly, you will not write any of your Wsdls in your applications. Mostly, somebody is exposing your services, SOAP services. You will be consuming. As a developer in Mulesoft, you should be able to understand the Wsdl. You don't need to be an expert in creating a Wsdl, right? Nowadays, everybody is using REST only. SOAP is becoming very less now. Maybe after few years, everybody will be using REST only, and there might be no SOAP, right? But you need to know SOAP. You need to understand Wsdl because there are a lot of old services still using SOAP. So if you understand these basics, you are good. Please understand, you don't need to be an expert in understanding the Wsdl, right? Just what are fundamentals I have told you, if you can just understand them at high level, that is much more sufficient for you to go ahead, right? So that's the end of this section. On day 3, you completed the discussion about SOAP and Wsdl and consuming SOAP web services. See you in day 4. Thank you.